Hey everyone, it is Chrissy at Pinovate. Today I have Morgan here with me from Esmé. She is going to show us and give us a tutorial on how to make our DIY Grinch trees. So open up your kit and follow along.
Hi everyone. So my name is Morgan. I am from Esmé. I am a nail tech / nail educator / salon manager by day and Santa's little helper by night. So today what we are going to do is our Grinch Tree workshop / DIY kits at home. So what we are going to be doing is going over our kit contents first. So what you'll get in your kit is some tinsel. You'll be getting your greeneries. You are going to get your little twinkly festive lights, batteries to go along with, your Oasis wire, your Oasis, some assorted ornaments in various shapes and sizes, as well as a pot. What you are going to need at home is going to be some sort of scissors or shears. Gardening shears would work the best. Water, because as we're talking, we are going to be soaking our Oasis to start. So pull that out of the box first and get that soaking. And then optional, depending on where you are storing your Grinch tree or displaying your Grinch tree, some sand or some rock just to put in the bottom of your pot, just for weight. So especially if you're putting this outside on your porch, you need it to weigh down just so it's not so top heavy. So that's what you'll need at home. So the first step that we're going to do is submerge our Oasis fully into water. You want it to absolutely be soaked for the longevity of your Grinch tree. I'm just gonna hold it down for a few seconds. Let it soak up. Okay, while that's happening, what you could do is dump your sand or your rocks into the bottom of your pot. Multitasking. Okay, so we want to let this soak for as long as possible. So while the Oasis is soaking, we are going to sort through our greens. We have two parts to our greens. The first one is the big tree. So what we're looking for, that is the longest and also the fullest branches from the greens that you have received. So this one is perfect. This is going to be our centerpiece. And I'm going to find another one that is hopefully just as long, but maybe not as luscious in the green. So these two I'm gonna put aside for the physical tree. So the next part that we're going to do is look through our assortment for semi-sparse. The reason I say semi is because we can use these tiny little guys at the bottom to fill the bottom of our pot, but also incorporate these semi-full branches into the big tree as well. So if we can separate them into small, large, and medium piles, that would be perfect. Okay, so our next step is actually making the physical Grinch tree. So what we want to do is all of the bulky pieces or the luscious pieces are going to get wrapped together. So I want you to make them all around the same length at the bottom. And the key part to this is making sure that your bottom is very tightly spun together, wrapped together with your wire. What I also suggest as we're going through is wherever you want that bend to be, make sure you put a lot of wire in that spot so that you can manipulate it how tight you want it. Some people like them sticking out a little bit, some people like them really tight. The next thing, if you want another curl coming in, make sure your ends have a lot of wire at the top too so you can really bend that into place. And we'll go from there. So, our Oasis wire, like I said, you want to start really tight at the bottom. I start a little bit up so that I can go down and then work my way back up. So I'm tying with a lot of pressure, working my way down. Okay, so a little tip is, or personal preference, as you're going up the branches, if you leave a few pieces out behind your wire, it does help with the cascade of the greens, but as well as that kind of separates them all from each other, especially if you're doing this as a group activity, so that they're not all cookie cutter. I think part of the Grinchiness is that they're not meant to be perfect. You can have a little bit of messiness along the way. So I'm just gonna keep on going. Make sure you're tight as can be, just to keep those branches nice and together. Halfway up the shaft of our branches is, I'm just gonna start thinking about where my curve is, because you can start to see this take place. So I'm gonna want my curve somewhere in and around here. So in this area, I want a lot of wire just so I can manipulate that properly. And we'll keep going. Okay, so I'm gonna go back and forth a couple times, working my way back down just to kind of help with that flexibility. But at the same time, making sure it's sturdy and keeps its shape. Okay, so I'm happy. And now I'm gonna work my way down. So then the same thing, at the very tip, I'm also going to add a little bit more wire just so I can curve it in a little bit as well. I'm gonna stop about there just so that way you have some fluff at the bottom. Okay, now I'm gonna turn it around just because I'm working my way back to the bottom. And this is just kind of loose, just so that we can finish it off. Just a loose wrap, just cascading back down so your wire stops and starts at the same spot, just so it doesn't poke through or it's all finished nicely. And there you go. So once you're satisfied, just clip off your end. If a little bit is poking out, you can stick it under the wire, but I wouldn't be too concerned because it's going to go into the Oasis. So it's just a nice way to finish it, just so that all your ends are hidden. Perfect. So we have our shape, and if you want to, you can really kind of bend it so that it's a little bit more Grinchy, however you want. Okay, so our next part is going to be our little Grinchy festive lights. The nice thing about these specific ones is you have lots of different settings, and there's multicolored, and then as well as kind of that soft white option. What I like to do is not necessarily start at the bottom here, because this part is going to be in the Oasis in the pot. So that way you get tons of lights at the top on your physical greens versus a little bit of waste at the bottom. But that could be personal preference. That's just what I choose. I'm also going to unwind this just a smidge to help with the wrapping. So I'm gonna leave this extra down below, and I'm gonna start the first light kind of where the greens first start. And then we're just going to wrap all around. And there's a lot of lights on here, so you can do this however you would like for fullness, or if you want to be perfect and precise, you can line them up nicely. But I think you probably should have enough to go up and back down and kind of meet back around this area. So my last part is I'm just going to find a spot where I can tuck in that last little light under, and then I'm gonna pull on the bottom, just because as you wind up and back down, the bottom part can sometimes loosen just a smidge. And if you want to, you can tuck it under the Oasis wire as well. Just find anywhere that you can sneak that little bulb up and around just to kind of lock it into place. Now, if I can do this with my really long nails, you definitely can do this at home. It's very, very easy and user friendly. Okay, there we go. So now our lights are done. Okay, so our next part is, now that our little Grinchy tree is prepped, we are going to release the Oasis from the water. But I want to just discuss this with you guys before you jump in and do it, because this is the only make or break part about this project. Your Oasis is very fragile. So what we don't want to do is pull the Grinch tree in and out of the Oasis, because you won't be able to put anything back in to that specific spot where the big hole is. So the reason we need to plan this out properly is we need to make sure that our pot is aesthetically pleasing. You don't want to have it on an angle, that the tree is off-centered. And we want to think about where we are popping the tree into the Oasis, because once it's in, you can't pull back out. The next thing we need to discuss is, obviously the Oasis is skinnier but taller than the pot. So we are going to pick up our brick of Oasis, line it up closest to an edge, and the hang over of the product that we're going to have extra hanging off the side is going to come from here and fill in the empty spot. So I'm gonna pick up, line up closest to the side of the pot, top or bottom. The overhang, we're going to pick up and fill in the gaps, okay? One thing is you don't necessarily need it to be soaking wet, so just let it drip off for a little bit if there's any extra. But you can see that that has been fully submerged. It actually will feel a lot heavier like a brick than foam, and that is very, very good. So here we go. I'm going to line this up closest to, there might be a little bit of overhang just on the side over here as well, but you want to get it really tight to your pot, and that overhang we can stuff in on the corner, okay? So I'm gonna push down gently, just wiggle it down. Slow and steady, just because it is fragile. There we go, there's our corner. We're gonna do the same over here. Perfect. Then we're gonna push as far down as possible. Okay, so we have pushed our foam down. We have the extra. Keep in mind, this is metal, so sometimes it will take shape to the brick of the Oasis. So just kind of mold it back into place. I actually don't mind this because it's still round on the front and it's a little bit flatter on the back. Still, this could maybe be against a wall or something like that. But it just kind of adds to the Grinchiness. It still is very cute at the top. So what I'm going to do is this extra part of the foam, I'm going to slide in closest to the corner, and we're just gonna push down again. Same thing, we're gonna come off this side because that's just easier, it kind of cuts the foam. If you want to, you could do this part in a sink, so obviously there is some water. This amount of water we can dip or drop the extra back into your bucket. We're just essentially making a really sturdy brick. Okay, we're packed in there. There you are. So our next step is, I would recommend popping in our batteries just before everything gets going with actual insertion of the greens. So we'll pop our little batteries into the box. Let's test our lights as well, just to make sure. So as you can see, we have the soft white, the magical Christmas Grinchy ones. You can make them flashing, do whatever. Just make sure that that's all in check before you pop it in, because it would be really hard to unravel this once it's in. So once we are satisfied with our light situation, what we want to do is we want to insert our Grinch tree. Now my recommendation is that where that larger part of the block was inserted with the Oasis, that's where you should insert the tree into, because that's going to hold the most of the weight. The smaller section will hold easily the light greens. So this is a one-shot deal. I would recommend not necessarily right at the corner, bring it in maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch into the pot. That way it has the most amount of weight and it can hold this in place. So we're just gonna go straight in, don't go on an angle, just pop it in. And you wanna push down all the way to the bottom. Perfect. Okay, so we can kind of manipulate this a little bit more if you'd like. And the next part we're going to do is we're going to cut off all these little greens. That way we can stick them all around the bottom of our pot. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have cut an assortment of our leftover greens, what we're gonna do is we're just going to randomly place them around for fullness. What I would recommend is some of your longer ones and kind of these bouncy loose ones can go to the side, just because then it's nice when they cascade over. Don't stick them right up. You want to create a little bit of fullness as well as some coverage to the Oasis. So if you have something long like this, maybe go on a little bit of an angle so that it falls over the pot, but this bottom section here covers part of your greens. So we're just going to slide in. And there's no true rhyme or reason. You're just placing them in. Shove them as far down as you can so that they are secure. And once you're kind of satisfied with the placement of your outskirt, then keep going in at your random assortment. Keep in mind though that once something is in, it's in. You can't pull out. So if you really do need to manipulate something and it's inside the Oasis, grab your shears and cut it at the base so that you have the extra fluff from the trees, but don't pull out because you'll wreck the Oasis. So a piece like this where it kind of branches off into two separate sections, this would be really good to lay kind of right across from the bottom of our tree. That way it can go straight in and it has enough coverage to cover a lot of that green Oasis in the bottom. It has more coverage than just a twig. As we are getting closer to the shaft of our tree or the base of our tree, I would say stick some really close to that just to add a little bit more fullness and height. So I would start going from like a 45 angle to more of a 90 just to kind of fill in that area, just to make it really lush at the base. Okay, something to think about is we still have all of our ornaments. So I've left, just generically, it happened to work out that way, a spot almost for our ornament here to rest on. So that's completely up to you, completely optional about how you lay your ornaments and your greens. You can have them coming up around the tree this way. I like to have one hanging down from here, so sometimes if it's heavy, it might push down. these are just things to think about on your way while you're inserting your greens. Okay, so the next and last step that we're going to do is deck the halls of our Grinch trees with the assortment of ornaments. They're all gonna come in different shapes and sizes and colors in your kit, so that way they're not all cookie cutter and they're all individually Grinchy. And we've also added these little coily, glittery twigs, I'm going to call them, that get popped into the bottom here. Just adds a little bit of festivity-ness to our glass. Okay, so what I would recommend is maybe don't cut all of the length, but maybe cut them at an assorted height, just so that the tinsel just kind of lays differently on every single one of your little trees. So I'm just gonna cut them randomly. And I'm also just going to pick what I want as the front side, because I don't necessarily need all the zhuzh on the back side of my tree. So I think I'm gonna have my front over here. So we're just gonna stick it into the Oasis, no rhyme or reason. That way they're not all cookie cutter, but it just adds a little bit of twinkle. And if you know me personally, you know that I am obsessed with glitter. So therefore I had to add these to our kits. Okay, so just random, cute. Okay, so my next thing is I'm going to figure out where I want my ornaments to lay, especially the big ball or shaped size ornament. Because of the length of it, I'm not necessarily going to have it super close to the end, just because I don't think it's gonna lay necessarily even to our pot. So I'm probably going to have this one hanging up over here, and then you can add your different assortment of shapes and size balls or ornaments all randomly across your tree. So how we're going to secure that is just a little bit more wire. Here we go. Okay, so we've taken our Oasis wire, we've looped it through the hole at the top. What I'm going to do, I've bent it in half again, just because it's easier to come over the tree than possibly trying to wire it around. And then we can wrap this, just like we did before, around and around to secure it. Okay, so our little Grinchy tree is complete. Just some things to note at the very end. If you are storing this outside, obviously in Calgary, it can get quite cold, so the brick of Oasis may freeze. Just keep that in mind. If you are storing this inside and you're noticing that it's possibly going a little bit limp, maybe add a little bit more water to your pot, just so it can get some life back into itself. Other than that, I think we are complete. I hope your little Grinchy trees are super cute inside your home for the holidays.
Thank you so much for purchasing your DIY Grinch Tree kit, and thank you to Morgan for doing this incredible tutorial. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
It is beautiful and fun, and it smells delicious, especially at Christmas time. So we want to see your Grinch trees, so please tag us at Pinovate on Instagram and Esmé Beautiful as well. So thank you again for following along, and happy holidays.